Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this session on Trade and Sustainability Hub, which is being organized on the sidelines of the now not being held 12th conference of the WTO ministerial meeting. On behalf of the organizers of this session, Citizens Platform for SDGs in Bangladesh, SWATEE in Nepal, and Center for Research on Bhutanese Society, Bhutan, along with our host organization, IISD Trade and Sustainability Hub. Let me once again welcome you to this session. This session is dedicated to the issue of international support measures for the graduating LDCs and perspectives from South Asia. As you all know, a number of LDCs are now being elevated into the pipeline for moving out from the list of the least developed countries as designated by the United Nations. Their number is now 16. It has swollen over the years. And a significant number of them are located in Asia, in particular in South Asia. These include Bangladesh, these include Nepal, these include Bhutan. Today we are going to hear what are the current state of affairs in this graduation process in these countries, as well as what are their assessment about the challenges they are going to face on this transition out from the LDC group, and more importantly, what type of international support measures are expected in order to alleviate some of these new risks and challenges. We have a fantastic, small but very highly reputed and qualified group of people, 3 of them from 3 countries, to initiate this discussion. I, Debapriya Bhattacharya, am the convener of the Citizens Platform for SDGs in Bangladesh, and I have had the opportunity of sitting in the United Nations Committee for Development Policy. I will be moderating it on your behalf. And I have my good friend and colleague, Professor Mustafizur Rahman from Center for Policy Dialogue, CPD in Bangladesh. Both of us are located in Dhaka, Bangladesh at this moment. I have Mr. Rabi Sainju, Executive Board Member of SWATEE, one of the leading think tanks, a network organization located in Kathmandu, Nepal. And I have His Excellency Sonam Tobden Rabi. He is a diplomat. Had been his last interaction with me had been when he was the ambassador of Bhutan in Bangladesh. He will be talking to us about the situation in Bhutan. So with these 3 colleagues, we will ground the discussion. I will anchor the discussion, and thereafter I will open it up. I see in the pipeline already I have more than 21 participants here. In the small screen, I can see already a number of my good friends showing up. I'll be inviting them as and when they want to speak. They will be raising their hands and also putting in their questions or comments in the chat box. So let me start by inviting Professor Mustafiz. Mustafiz will be telling us about, giving us the broad context of what are the expectations of the graduating LDCs from South Asia towards their international development partners. Mustafiz, your time starts now. And I hope you keep it within 10 minutes, 12 minutes, please. We can hear you. I can hear you.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you.
No, it's still not.
Can you?
Yeah.
Yes,
perfect.
now here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Debapriya, and thank you for.
Mustafiz, may I suggest something? Whether you could take off your headphones, maybe that might help.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's much better because with
No, I
this
can't
one,
hear you then. Yeah, then I
take
can't
off
hear
the
you.
Okay.
No, okay, it's okay. Thank you, Dr. Debapriya, for giving us the context of today's discussion. I think it's very important, as Dr. Debapriya has mentioned, 16 LDCs are at various stages of graduation. And as of now, 7 LDCs have been recommended for graduation over the next few years. As you know, as Dr. Debapriya mentioned, 3 of these are from South Asia: Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal. Indeed, at the last plenary meeting of the UN General Assembly, Bangladesh and Nepal recommendation by the CDP, of which Dr. Debapriya is a member, it has been endorsed. So we have a concrete timeline for 2026, and for Bhutan it is earlier, 2023. So before I go into the international support measures that Dr. Debapriya mentioned for the graduating LDCs, let me give you the context that we are graduating at a time when our economies have been very adversely affected by the ongoing pandemic, in terms of the GDP growth, exports, in terms of employment, in terms of the standard of living of the people, not to talk of the health risks that we are going through. So this is a very special time that we are making and preparing for the transition. The second is that LDC graduation concerns 3 criteria, but there are structural weaknesses, embedded difficulties in our countries, including income inequalities, including the development in terms of industrialization, etc., etc. So LDC graduation is taking place in our countries with a lot of embedded weaknesses. The third is that, as Dr. Debapriya also mentioned, the WTO ministerial meeting, which was supposed to be, didn't happen. So the multilateral system is also weakened significantly. But for our countries, always a rule-based system is always good, as we know. Also, we know that there was a decadal program of action that was taken in Istanbul. Many of the targets that were set have not been fulfilled. So that is also the background. And we are seeing rise of mega regionals where the LDCs and graduating LDCs are not members. So rules are being set outside of the WTO where we are not party to. And also countries like Bangladesh added challenges that we are making dual transition, middle income transition. Bangladesh has made in 2015, which means that we are no longer eligible for concessional lending also. So we will need a lot of financial resources in order to invest in our infrastructure when we graduate to make the graduation sustainable, but the costs will be going up. So this dual graduation is also a major problem for us. And I would also like to add that the 2 criteria, HAI, the Human Asset Index, was fixed at 66 and above, and Economic Vulnerability Index was fixed at 32 and below in 2012. And that also made many of the LDCs to graduate at one go. So we will have to remember that for over 45 years, only 6 LDCs graduated, and now 16 LDCs are eligible for graduation because of the change in the rules of the game. Now, if you look at this picture, we can see that what is the size of the GDP, export and import. We are not big players, but of the 7, obviously Bangladesh is a major, first major LDC which is going to graduate. You can see that out of the 7, in terms of GDP, for example, 73% is Bangladesh. In terms of the export, 53% is Bangladesh. So for us in Bangladesh, it is obviously very important. And we need international support measures because we can see from here that graduation will have a lot of impact in terms of the special and differential treatment that we receive, in terms of the various unilateral preferential market access that we enjoy and gives us competitiveness, in terms of many of the in regional trading arrangements also. LDCs are given a lot of preferential market access. So those will not be there. And added to that, when we are making, as I was mentioning, the dual graduation, the middle income graduation, there will also not be concessional financing. So all of these will have impact on loss of the flexibilities that we have in terms of policies, the preferential market access will mean that we will lose a lot of our competitive edge as well. So there are a lot of concerns. And as I was mentioning, there are 183 special and differential treatment in the 16 WTO agreements in terms of extended period of implementation, waivers granted, flexibility. Bangladesh has gained a lot because of the TRIPS extension, and we have a very thriving pharmaceutical sector thanks to that. And a lot of preferential market access driven competitiveness edge that we are enjoying. And Bangladesh has gained a lot from various these international support mechanisms which are there, which will not be there beyond 2026. So that's where really comes the issue of international support mechanism. This pie chart shows that there will be impact in the domestic space and also in the global space. In the domestic space, obviously policy-making flexibility, obligations will go up, but policy-making flexibility will go down. At the global interface, we will see that the degree of reciprocity will go up, because as LDCs, we are accustomed to non-reciprocity. And of course, last but not the least, the terms of market access. In Europe, for example, Bangladesh's major export ready-made garments, it enjoys a 12% preference because we don't have to give that 12% tariff. But these will not be there, although EU has given us 3 additional years. So lots of preferential market access, lots of flexibilities, more onerous obligations and enforcement. All these are very important, which we'll have to keep in mind when we are talking about sustainable LDC. So what we are wanting, new international support measures that Dr. Debapriya mentioned. We think that the special and differential treatment, there is, we want an extension of this in a time-bound manner. There has been a proposal submitted on behalf of the LDCs by Chad for 12 years of extension. We think that if it is not 12 years, at least 6 to 9 years. Also, we think that those preferences which are given outside of the WTO, but it is notified under the enabling clause, the market access. So those we are wanting these countries, those offering countries, to extend us beyond the graduation timeline for certain years. And also, I take it from Dr. Debapriya also, he has mentioned that whether there can be a debt relief initiative for the graduating LDCs, because we will need a lot of money in order to make graduation sustainable, invest. And so if there is a support fund, graduation support fund, that will be a major support for us. And what we are also seeing is that there is a proposal that exports from the LDCs, if it is just not the finished products, but if it goes through a third country also to the element, the value added which is there in the LDCs, whether that at least can be given zero tariff, the value addition that has been made in the LDCs. So that this is another proposal, GVCs for LDCs, global value chain for LDCs. So this is one that we can also think about. And also we need to embed the concerns of the graduating LDCs in the ongoing discussions on fisheries sector, on agriculture, so that when they graduate, they are not they will not be facing these challenges. Now, what are the arguments? Obviously, one argument in favor of the proposal of extension of the SNDT and the preferences is that we are going through a pandemic, and this pandemic will have a prolonged shadow on our graduation journey. So obviously there is a very strong argument from that perspective. There is also sometimes it's said that there is no group called graduating LDCs, and we are telling that we are not wanting it as a graduating. So we are LDCs who are graduating. So we are submitting as LDCs. So some countries are arguing that there is no separate group. So this is the argument. And also the argument is that there are many SNDTs which are there, which has been given to the developing countries. We can talk about the SNDT extension in case of trips which was given to Maldives when it was graduating. We can talk about the net food importing countries, which are developing countries, but if they are net food importing, they are given flexibilities in the agreement on agriculture. So we are telling that there are precedences in support of certain developing countries. So that is a very strong argument for us. The other is that already in the WTO system there are various facilities for the developing for the graduating LDCs. For example, once they graduate, 5 years of extension from the technology bank. So that is there. European Union has given additional 3 years market access. So it's not that it is not there. There are certain flexibilities for countries even after they have graduated. So our argument is that if it is there, why can't we extend these? And also the last point that I would like to say, there are many special and differential treatment which were given to the LDCs, but we have not been able to enjoy this. Let us think about, for example, the Hong Kong ministerial decision with regard to duty-free quota fee. The decision was taken, not implemented. GATT services waiver, decision was taken, not implemented. So we think that at least we can get some additional time in order that the decisions that has been taken, we can enjoy those. Last point that I would like to mention is that we ourselves, we will have to think about our 3 identities. As an LDC, because we have certain years, for example, Bangladesh has another 5 years, Nepal has another 5 years. Second is as a graduating LDC, if we can negotiate international support measures for the LDCs. And third identity is as future developing country. Our future is as a developing country. We want to be there, but on a sustainable basis. So in the ongoing negotiations also, we will have to keep all the 3 identities in the perspective, so that we can negotiate also keeping our future in the horizon. For example, in the agreement on fisheries, agreement on agriculture, we'll have to keep our identity as a future developing country as well. So my last submission is that we do need international support measures. We want to graduate sustainably, but this support measure will help us to make to come to the timeline with momentum and make it sustainable. Thank you very much, Dr. Debapriya.
Thank you very much, Mustafizur, for you have colleagues, friends. You have heard Professor Mustafizur Rahman from Center for Policy Dialogue, Dhaka, Bangladesh, who had been making a strong pitch for continuation of the international support measures which already currently exist for the LDCs, and also their possible intensification or extension beyond the graduation timeline for these countries. You have heard him speaking about the context within which it is happening, the pandemic context, also the global economic environment remains depressed. And he has concentrated mostly on the WTO-related, trade-related matters. You have heard both as the preferences enjoyed by the LDCs as LDCs and also as a developing country under that. The proposals are there on the table. We are yet to be seen. There is also the TRIPS issue. There is the net food importing NFIDC issue. There are also country-specific measures issues which has been mentioned. And then Professor Mustafizur comes up with the 3 identity issues. I only wonder which one is the anchoring identity of the 3. We will not get confused with 3. But he makes the point that the international support measures will be critical in ensuring smooth and sustainable transition, possibly inclusive transition for the countries in South Asia in particular, and all the other graduating LDCs, the rest of the 13 in general. So thank you, Mustafiz, for that very broad sweeping, I would say broad brush, canvas drawing. And it is not only relevant for the South Asian countries, but I think what you have said is relevant for the whole LDC group in many ways. Let me now bring in Mr. Rabi Shankar Sainju from Nepal. He remains with the SWATEE, our partner organization, and we are very happy to welcome him. Mr. Sainju, the floor is yours for the next 5-7 minutes. Yes, please.
Thank you, Debapriya. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Are you hearing? Yes, thank you. Thank you, Debapriya, for providing me the opportunity to speak in this program. I especially thank Mr. Rahman for his presentation and his advocacy for the whole graduating countries. It's very interesting. I mean, he has raised all the pertinent questions that we are thinking on that part. And because if you see in the case of Nepal, we have already, I mean, we achieved the, I mean, these under the 3 criteria, 2 criteria we have already achieved since 2015. Still, and we are lag behind in the income criteria that we know very well on that part. If you see, I mean, criteria wise, in the economic vulnerability index, we are 20% ahead. And even in human asset index, we are 9.3% ahead on the baseline, isn't it? But still, if you see, I mean, we are in the this income criterion, we are 25.9% behind. So that is the situation that we have. So in this context, I mean, definitely we have 2 challenges. One challenge is maintaining the criteria that we have already achieved, the human asset index and even this vulnerability index. We have to maintain that. And another part is definitely we have to achieve the income criterion also, although the two criteria is enough for graduating. So in this context, definitely we also, I also think that international support measure is very important for us, even after graduation. So whatever Mr. Rahman has posed in the issue posed here, that is pertinent for Nepal also. So I think that, I mean, definitely we also have to negotiate on that part. So definitely after graduation, Nepal is also going to lose, I mean, especially in the trade and industrial sector. Yeah, so I think, I mean, the ISM has to support in this, improve the market access, especially. So three things I'm just expecting from ISM. That is, one is improve the market access, because it is very important, because we are going to lose, I mean, the whatever, I mean, duty-free, quota-free access we are getting from the different 25 different markets that we have presently we are having. So that is the one part. The second part is definitely we also need to, the ISM is necessary to target a trade promotions, because graduating, after graduating, we are these different companies who are exporting, they are going to lose all these things. And then third part is market diversifications. That is also very important, because we have to see the other market also where we can export our products. That is also necessary. Just I want to give the example. Presently, I mean, we are exporting synthetic fiber in the Turkey, but we are going to lose after this GSP. So definitely there is another market we have to see, that is for Bangladesh, India, for the ready-made garment, we can export the yarn in that country. So that is also very important for us. So market diversification, we need support from the ISM. Besides other, I mean, if you see, one of the studies by the UNSCAP, done little bit, it was in 2018, that has shown that even in the South Asian countries, Nepal has exploited only the 24% of its export potential. So it means, I mean, there is a connectivity problem is there. Besides, there are other problem also. We have to think on that line also. We have to work on that part also to because that is very necessary for us. The connectivity, definitely BVIN can be one of the major that can solve some part of this connectivity problem also. So we need to think on that part. Nepal also should aggressively work on to this finalizing this protocol. There is no so beside, I mean, just I want to inform here, Nepal is recently preparing the logistic policy, comprehensive logistic policy, focusing on export and even the internal distribution system. So because I mean, our internal distribution system is very poor, and definitely there are very fragmented working procedure in the logistic system itself. So definitely, we hope that after once we started implementing it, that will help in reducing the cost of trade. That is another part. So that is another part. The other part is definitely we have to see the review the industrial policies and even the trade policy from the point of view of productivity, increasing, enhancing productivity and employment generation. It is also very important because our industrial policy was a little bit, I mean, it was prepared before we started working for graduating from the LDCs. So we need to work on that part also. We are also thinking on I mean, e-commerce part, because the digitalization of the this trading sector is very, e-commerce can play a very good role on that part. So definitely we are also, I mean, in the logistic policy, what we are thinking that we are also trying to keep the e-commerce as one of the component, especially serving the SMEs. So we are also trying to use, I mean, government is trying to use the postal services for the e-commerce. So these are some of the issues that we need to think on, we need to work on for this to cope up the problem that we are going to face after graduations. So these are some of the points I put. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sainju, for that. I think the Nepalese circumstances has been well brought out by your intervention, that you are yet to fulfill one of the three criteria, but nonetheless, you are progressing with the transition, given that two others have been fulfilled as necessary. Your emphasis on improved market access, essentially meaning that continuation of the current privileges or preferences is well taken. Your emphasis also on the industrial policies is correct, because the structural transformation is still unfulfilled. Graduation from the LDC group does not necessarily, these are all happening with all the countries with their incomplete structural transformation, where the manufacturing sector or the high value added services are supposed to lead the economic processes. The issue of economic commerce, and particularly emphasizing on the small and medium enterprises with using the postal services as the conduit, also is quite interesting for that. So you make the point that for all these transitions or transformations, international support measures will be critical. Thank you for that. Let me move to Ambassador Sonam. Sonam, please, would you kindly come on board and brief us on the Bhutanese situation? Because Bhutan had been much more ahead than Bangladesh and Nepal in these cases in terms of the graduation trajectory. And you will be graduating earlier as well. So what is the status, please?
Yes, Professor, can you hear me?
You are fine, excellent.
Okay, great. First of all, I would like to thank the IISD, and the 3 research organizations of Bangladesh, Bhutan, and Nepal for organizing this event. I owe special thanks to my colleague, Mr. Bandari from the Bhutan Research Society for asking me to speak on Bhutan's graduation from the LDC category. And my aim is to present a sober report based on the ground realities regarding the challenges of Bhutan's graduation and suggest some way forward. A little background: Bhutan, as you know, is a small landlocked country with over 70% of its land under forest cover, and among the few countries in the world that is carbon neutral. The country has witnessed rapid development in recent decades, with per capita growing from US $330 in 1980s to 3,300 as of 2019. The country has had remarkable success in tackling the COVID-19 pandemic with only 3 deaths so far. And these achievements must be attributed to the leadership of His Majesty the King, and under His Majesty the 4th King, Bhutan subscribed to a development model called the Gross National Happiness that promotes well-being of the people, preservation of the environment, and balanced socio-economic development. However, today, like the rest of the world, Bhutan is also reeling from the negative effects of the pandemic crisis. And it is under these circumstances that she is poised to graduate from the LDC group in 2023, having fulfilled 2 thresholds, namely the per capita and human asset index. Fulfilling the 3rd criteria, economic vulnerability index, remains the biggest challenge due to the ongoing pandemic. According to the report of the UN Secretary General, while graduation signifies an important achievement in the development continuum of an LDC, the associated challenges often raise significant concerns, as LDCs are set to lose benefits specific to this group and favorable arrangements. And Bhutan's smooth transition, as per the UNSG report, is also, and I quote, premised on the full implementation of its 12th 5-year plan, which is from 2018 to 2023, at the end of which we graduate. And it is my humble view that based on the ground realities, Bhutan may face short and long-term challenges upon graduation. Firstly, we are heavily reliant on the development and growth of hydropower sector, which contribute 30% of the revenue. And the growth of this industry is dependent on the rivers fed by the Himalayas, which is vulnerable to climate change and climate-induced disasters. Natural disasters and geological surprises have already impacted the cost of hydropower projects. And the pandemic has delayed completion of hydropower projects due to lack of skilled foreign workers. Secondly, a narrow economic base and massive trade deficit, limited export diversity, and high dependency on a single market makes Bhutan vulnerable to external shocks. The recent increase in petrol and diesel is an example. High cost of transportation and delivery of social services because of the difficult terrain. Bhutan's other main source of revenue, the tourism sector, has been devastated by the pandemic. Around 32% who depend on tourism for their livelihood have lost their jobs, and many Bhutanese working overseas returned, leading to a sharp increase in unemployed Bhutanese. And the hotel and airline industry have been very badly affected by the pandemic. They've come to a standstill. And of course, we have a small population and lack of human capacity. Almost 60% of the population relies on agriculture, and human-wildlife conflict affects almost 40% of the farming households. Roads that enable farmers access to market and import of rice, fuel, and medicine are vulnerable to landslides. And less than 20% of arable land is irrigated, and due to persistent crop and livestock loss to wildlife, pests, and disease, almost 30% of the arable land are currently fallow, and farming also remains highly vulnerable to climate change. Withdrawal of Bhutan's traditional development partners, whose combined ODA fund around 30% of all development programs. ODA has always been a significant source of funding for our development programs. After graduation, some of the development partners may switch from grants to concessional loans. Despite efforts, Bhutan has had limited success in attracting global investors. In 2015, only 0.4% of GDP was attributed to FDI, which is far less compared to other LDCs as well as countries in South Asia. And more than 5% of Bhutanese are multidimensionally poor, and more than 93% of the poor are in rural areas. And due to the pandemic, many are at risk of falling below the poverty line, surviving only thanks to the Royal Kidu scheme. And as per the latest reports, domestic revenue projection in the 12th plan has fallen from Gultrum's 217 billion to 179 billion. And then we would also lose access to various funds like the Climate Finance, Global Alliance, etc. Now, what is the way forward? Despite these challenges, Bhutan is in a position to preparing for a smooth transition before graduation. And in this regard, the government could do a thorough analysis of the ODA and trade implications with Bhutan's bilateral and multilateral partners. In this regard, engage with the UN and other development institutions and develop a clear transition strategy to mobilize ODA after 2023 and initiate other appropriate measures. Diversify economic activities, including the growing ICT sector, and adopt new technologies after graduation. Improve trade and diversify tradable products with neighboring and other countries. Reduce rural-urban migration and diversify development in all the districts. Take steps to attract FDI. Reduce unemployment, especially the youth, by improving vocational training institutes. And at the same time, provide incentives to the private sector whose initiatives help to create jobs. Consider signing the BBIN motor vehicle agreement, which will help to enhance trade with Bangladesh, particularly. Improve human capacity and efficiency in all sectors. And finally, export hydropower to Bangladesh. This is something we have been discussing for quite some time now, and it has also, a site has been identified and it is feasible. And this has just come up in the current National Assembly discussions, and the Prime Minister has said that we will work on this. And I think this will be a very important step also. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonam, for that. I think we got an excellent overview of issues, both in terms of the current status of on the pandemic situation, and Bhutan needs to be complimented very profusely for showing the best possible performance in terms of containing the pandemic, holding down the infection rate, and also the casualty rate, and also vaccination now, having it at one of the highest in South Asia. So Bhutan remains a specific example for us to follow. But also thank you for the current development prospects and the challenges, particularly with relation to hydropower, the impact of pandemic on tourism, and also thereafter, as you have said, that how the transition strategy has been formulated, articulated for Nepal. And that's quite a comprehensive one, what you have just mentioned, including the elements of regional cooperation with regard to Bangladesh. That's quite heartening for many of us, and for Bhutan, Bangladesh, India, and Nepal together in many ways. So the regional cooperation element is also coming up strongly within the transition strategies. The interesting question which is there is that whether this transition strategy will be an effective tool for mobilization of the international support measures or not. Because that is the question which we are discussing this with the various graduating countries and the CDP in this regard. And this is the issue. What we will do with the transition strategy document in the future. Colleagues, thank you very much. All the three panelists, Mustafizur, Sainju, and Ambassador Sonam. for this excellent background presentation. I think we are set for a good in-house discussion now. I see more than 29 participants total. I would strongly encourage all of you to put in your questions or comments or criticisms in your in the chat box. But given that we still have almost half an hour, I'll be happy to take as many questions or comments or interventions as possible. And any complementary interventions will be very, very welcome at this moment. And I see many colleagues who are here are quite conversant with the issues. They're on top of things. And so I'll be very happy to give them the floor. Please raise your hands or just butt in. Anybody? Any volunteer? So in that case, let me be more specific and direct. Let me invite Christoph Wellman. Christoph, can you hear me? Christoph Wellman is in Geneva. He is a great expert on less developed country issues. For the last couple of decades, he has been working on it. We had been friends and colleagues on many occasions. And I'm happy to invite Christoph Wellman. Christoph, what do you think? Let me put a question to you, Christoph, as an old hand. Is this a reasonable demand for the graduating LDCs to ask for continuation of the preferences? Both, what do you think, technically and politically? Christoph.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Deb. It's a pleasure to see many friends and colleagues. Let me make maybe a few remarks and maybe then ask a couple of questions to the presenters. First, to answer your question, is it reasonable to ask for an extension of the support measures? I don't think this is unreasonable at all. And I think the presenters have made a very strong case for that. What they haven't mentioned, but I think it's important to remember, is that there are some United Nations General Assembly resolutions that actually call for WTO members to extend special and differential treatment after graduation, and call on members who are granting unilateral preferences to put in place mechanisms to extend those mechanisms. We know that it's been done by the EU, by Turkey. So there are precedents in this area. So again, I don't think it's unreasonable. The question, of course, is going to be, how long and how much and so on and so forth. On the special and differential treatment side, which is the unilateral trade preferences, at the end of the day, it's essentially a unilateral decision by the preference granting countries. Of course, in the WTO, one can, encourage and require as much as possible that members extend their DFQS scheme. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a unilateral decision. On the other aspects, which you mentioned, I think, Mustafizur, is the special and differential treatment provisions, and whether these can be extended. I think there is also a very strong rationale for that. The challenge that we're facing a little bit in this discussion is that some WTO members have basically questioned a number of things. First, the fact that, and if you look at the LDC proposal that has been put on the table, basically it requires to come up with extend S&D provisions for all LDCs. So to have some sort of an automatic mechanism that would equally apply to all LDCs. And I think that's a very important aspect of the discussion, of the debate, because it provides for predictability. It provides for make sure that there is automaticity, and does not depend on the negotiating capacity of individual LDCs. And I think this is something that is still being questioned by a number of WTO members, is whether the same package of support measures should apply equally to all LDCs. And I think it would be interesting to hear from the different presenters some kind of good arguments why there should have, all graduating LDCs should have the same kind of package of support measures accessible to them. Another issue that has been raised a little bit in the discussion, and where it would be also useful to have feedback from the participants, is the fact that because the graduation criteria threshold is set higher than the inclusion threshold when a country becomes an LDCs, some members have said, well, if we provide special support measures for those graduating LDCs, some of them already have higher income and already have higher EVI or HAI indexes than non-LDCs, and therefore there will be some kind of discrimination. Again, I think it would be interesting to hear a bit what could be the arguments that LDCs can advance to respond to this argument, and maybe the speakers can help us here in this respect. Thank you. I think you're muted.
No, thank you, Christoph, for problematizing the issue. I like that because there are a number of issues which are coming up vis-a-vis the demand for extending the international support measures to the graduating LDCs. One issue is what Mustafizur has referred to in his presentation, the locus standi of the graduating LDCs, and that there is no specific group like that. But how do you do that? But you have referred, Christoph, to the UN General Assembly resolution going back some time, and where the call has been given to support the graduating LDCs. The second point, which is coming up from you, and that I have heard quite a lot, particularly in Geneva, that why do you have to give it to all LDCs? On the other hand, Mustafizur in his presentation referred to that there are country-specific solutions. So on the one hand, there is a group demand. On the other hand, there is a possibility of country-specific solutions or support measures, as in case of Maldives, or in case, if you look at European Union, the derogations and other things given for GSP plus for former LDCs like Cabo Verde. So that is an issue also, that whether it's a blanket or it is specific to issues. The third issue is that whether it has to be specific to sectors or it is across the board like that. So whether it will be specific to sectors, specific to the instrument, or specific to a country, or is specific to a provider. Because how do you really put it into a framework or or in a legal or a binding, if not binding, voluntary, but how do you put it in a structure, in an institutional format? So there are a number of issues. Last but not the least is that given the post-pandemic global economic circumstances and the circumstances given in the provider countries, here I mean the northern provider countries, not from the south, but their situation, whether to what extent that is conducive to the circumstances. I'm talking about the political appetite, whether the political appetite is here. So let me continue with the discussion a bit more. Do I see somebody from European Union over here? I have the bad habit of calling on people. So I see this another name over here with the U over there, Remco Val. Would you like to come on board? Because European Union had been one of the largest generous providers of market access through EBA. Would you like to come in? Anybody from European Union? Anybody else on any particular issue? or any other issue you'd like to raise, please. Mr. Remkoval from European Union has put a question. Thank you very much to all three speakers and the chair. FDI was mentioned. How does graduation affect the three country strategy and outreach to investors? Very good point. The Remkoval from European Union is asking, FDI was mentioned. How does graduation affect the three country strategy and outreach to the investors? Very good. Let me go back to the panelists with this question. That what do you expect, what is going to happen to, what is going to change, both in terms of policies and otherwise, once the graduation is done in order to get foreign direct investment in this country. Let me just recall from my earlier study, the studies in terms of the review of the graduating LDCs, the 5 of them, showed that although the ODA flow did not immediately fall, but it gradually came down. But what was interesting, in all the graduating countries, the tax GDP ratio improved, and also FDI GDP ratio improved. So it shows that the countries were supplementing their investable resources more with domestic resource and foreign direct investment. So the question to the three colleagues, and I will start from the end now with Sonam, that what changes do you anticipate? You have also mentioned FDI and about employment. So what changes do you anticipate in these cases? Is FDI going to fall after graduation, or is it going to go up? In order to make it go up, what policy changes are being anticipated? Sonam, please. Can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Unmute yourself. Please unmute.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me, Deb? Okay.
Now it's fine.
So, yeah, my submission was that for various reasons, Bhutan has somehow not been able to attract FDI. It made various attempts. And so my submission is that we need to do something about it, because after we graduate, we will face more challenges in earning resources and developing the country. So it is in this regard that I was making this point, that we need to attract FDI, and this is something that we need to do, put our house in order.
Let me follow up with a halfway question, Sonam. The FDI in Bhutan is essentially Indian FDI at this moment, isn't it?
India is the largest, but we have had FDI coming from other countries.
And beyond hydroelectricity.
Yes, in the tourism sector, particularly in the hotel industry and some like water plants, water bottling plants. So it's not solely restricted to India.
It is not solely restricted to India. It's not solely restricted to hydropower. Thank you very much on that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Rabi, Mr. Sainju, what is the Nepalese perspective on FDI vis-a-vis graduation? Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. No, definitely, actually, we are also not getting the FDI as expected, isn't it? So that is the things. And even after having this graduating, definitely we have to work on very hard to get attract this FDI. So that's why I have already mentioned it in my previous submission also, that we are preparing all this logistic policy for a better supply chain management to create the industrial environment here. That is one part. The second part, definitely I have also mentioned here, I mean, government of Nepal is also reviewing its industrial policy. So how to attract the FDI, that is another part, I mean, it's going on. So that is very important for us. So definitely, I mean, I expect that will materialize more FDI in coming year. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that you are trying to improve your policy framework and also the enabling environment for attracting more diversified FDI on that. Thank you very much. Mustafiz, I don't have the question of FDI to you. I'm sure you can respond to that. But no, please, you're being muted. If you please open up your microphone. No, I can't hear you. Your headphone microphone is disturbing you. If you can take it out from your computer, that would help. Take it out totally so that you can hear it through your computer. It's better. Tell me. Now you can hear? No, you're gone again. No. And take out the computer, the microphone. Use your normal microphone. No, we can't hear you. Can you fix it? Now it's better. Yes, come ahead.
Yes. Okay. No, with regard to the FDI, I would like to say that in case of Bangladesh, our FDI is less than 1%
of GDP.
Of GDP annually. But whatever FDI we receive, one of the major incentives for the FDI is that if they invest here and export to the global market, they will have preferential market access, which will give them a competitive edge. So to that extent, obviously, there will be a negative impact.
Mustafiz, are you telling us that your FDI in Bangladesh is all export-oriented FDI?
No. I am telling the export-oriented part that will, there will be disincentive. But having said that, I think FDI comes not just for market access, because there are so many other factors that even if you get zero tariff, they outweigh them, and that's why it is only less than 1%. So we'll have to.
Because we know that there is either it is resource seeking or market seeking or efficiency seeking. So it will come for resource seeking or efficiency seeking. Yes, but please carry on.
To add that once we graduate, I think that the branding that comes with it, and also the credit rating that comes with it, it could help the potential investors to raise funds and come. So we see that, as you have mentioned, that some of the countries which have graduated earlier, they were able to also compensate for the market access loss through the FDI. So I think that it can cut both ways, but it will depend on our domestic homework as well.
Policies, correct. At the end of the day, FDI's major determinant is the domestic enabling environment and the effectiveness of the regulatory framework and predictability. No doubt about that. Colleagues, I will now go around and make this most provocative point which Christoph was saying. And I don't see any other questions in the chat box other than all the colleagues who are expressing their satisfaction in terms of being here today. The question is, why all LDCs? Because not all of them are equally good. This is an old debate of special and differential treatment. This is an old debate of the special and differential treatment in the WTO, that many countries are developed in many areas. Why would you need to give the special preference to those countries where they have already shown global level competitiveness? So my question to the panel is, why the countries should not be differentiated, why the sectors could not be differentiated in this regard, and why the instruments cannot be differentiated in this regard, even if we accept the logic that the international support measures are necessary for smooth transition of the graduating LDCs. So let me start with Mustafiz.
Yeah.
Why all LDCs? Why so long, and why for all sectors?
Yeah, it's a very, I think, pertinent observation. But my submission will be that this came up when there was, the discussion about LDC specific international support measures. At that time also it was raised that whether we need a differentiated, common but differentiated approach or a common approach. So I think that, you see, from implementation side, it will be very difficult if we go for some, some specific type of, it will be time consuming. There will be a lot of.
You are accepting the logic, but you are giving that technically it will be difficult. It's an implementation problem, not a rational problem.
I think that it is an implementation problem, but also at the same time, it's also, because this is a group. And if we want to differentiate among them and with our weak bargaining power, it will be, we will be opening Pandora's box. So I think that from implementation perspective also, I don't think that it will be very easy to admit. And also my point is that if it is given, but I don't have the capacity, I don't say that I don't need it. I don't have the capacity, I don't use it. You say there are so many special and differential treatment provided to the LDCs. How many we have been able to use it? So every country.
If you get it again, you won't be able to use it.
I need some which I will choose. So I think that, differentiating that which one I need, which one I don't need, I think that's not a very good argument for me. So that will be my submission.
Sonam, what is your thought? Bhutan is not interested in all types of things.
No, Bhutan's case is a little different because, as you know, we are not a large exporter and we are not beneficiaries of the support measures supported by EU, etc. So that is why we are not talking too much about this, I guess. Our policymakers and our economic ministry people. So because to put it very simply, it's not so relevant to Bhutan. Thank you.
So Bhutan I think, is more on regional support measures are more important in many ways.
Yes, regional, bilateral.
Yes, regional, bilateral, sub-regional. These are the country-specific interesting points on that. I have a number of colleagues already asking for floor. I will come to that, but let me get Mr. Sainju on board first. Mr. Sainju, what is your thinking on why Nepal would need all types of support which it doesn't use?
And definitely, actually, we could not use all these supports, but there are a lot of gaps are there. But I think, I also agree with the Rahman also, because we need to bargain in a group. That is necessary, because if we go one by one, then it's not possible in these situations. So I agree with Rahman, actually. Thank you.
So he invoked technical issue, you are invoking tactical issues. Okay, good. Let me, and Sonam has said that he is not very much on it in that way from Bhutan side. So I have in the chat box 2 comments. Poshraj Pante, our good friend from Nepal, and the president, chair of the SWATEE, our co-organizers, he thanks the panelists for the interesting view. And his question is there any possibility of taking graduation as an opportunity to reform and reorient economy for structural transformation and improving productive capacity? If so, then how? Posh, would you kindly take the floor? And usually the person who gives the question has the answer. So would you kindly give the answer? Not do it how? Posh, would you come on board? Yes.
Just a minute.
Yes, Dr. Poshraj Pandey from Nepal, Kathmandu, speaking to us. He will tell us how to use the graduation as an opportunity to improve productivity and structural transformation. Please, Posh.
I'm putting the questions. I just want to hear from the panelists.
No, you have been part of the graduation.
What we are discussing is, okay, we're going to lose the ISM, and that might affect our economy or our trade, and also development finance. Maybe we need to think, from positive perspective. Like, it might compel us to reform our economy. To address some structurals.
Of course, let me stop you here.
parameters.
So if the graduating LDCs do not get international support measures continuation for pretty long, then they will be forced to do the reforms, isn't it? In order to have reform, maybe you should not have international support measures. International support measures are going to spoil you.
My argument is, okay, it's like, I mean, we are getting duty-free quota free market access. And say, for example, MFN tariff rate is 10%. What does that mean? It means they allow us to continue our 10% inefficiency compared to our competitor.
Yeah,
so
I would give you the example that if you want to have GSP plus in European Union, then you will have to do a number of reforms. And that reforms are necessary from labor standard point of view, your social human rights point of view, and also productivity. Isn't it good that you better graduate and go for a higher level of preferences, which the demands are higher?
Okay, that's the issue I just wanted to raise, over here. That's why,
okay.
Okay, let's take it as an opportunity.
Okay, so you are ready to take up the challenge. I'm so happy that somebody is ready to take up the challenge. So I also have in the chat box, Mr. Dr. Achyut Bhandari from the Nepal. From Bhutanese Studies.
Bhutan.
Center, from Bhutan. So Professor Bhandari, would you like to take the floor? What was your comment, Mr. Bhandari?
Thank you, Professor Bhattacharya. I wish to thank all the
we could earlier see you when you were not talking. Now you are talking, we don't see you.
Well, that's not my problem. I think it's a problem of IISD. But the good thing is that if you can hear me,
that's okay. Carry on.
Yeah, okay. It says unable to start video, so I don't know what it is. No, this is. I think this is really the crux of the discussion for LDC graduation. And I would like to agree with you and Dr. Pandey that we all have to see this as an opportunity. How long are we going to be labeled as an LDC and always asking for this concession and that concession? My personal view, and I think it's supported by Ambassador Rabi, is that graduation will force us to undertake reforms. Obviously, that reforms that the government will take will depend on what it wants to do. But definitely, from Bhutan's perspective, I hope the LDC graduation will enable our private sector to take a bigger role than it has been doing at the moment. Because so far, government has always been in the forefront. And private sector keeps on saying that, look, you don't give us importance, So that's one thing. The other thing is, as far as FDI is concerned, Bhutan is in a very poor, is Ambassador Rabi mentioned a figure of 0.15%, 0.4% in 2015. If you look at that figure now, between 2015 and 2019, it's gone down to 0.15% on average, So Bhutan will have to find resources, be it from region or from outside the region, and we'll have to do something to attract foreign direct investment to supplement our own domestic resources and to compensate.
Dr. Bhandari, let me stop you and ask you one question. So
yes, please.
You and Dr. Pandey, you are arguing that you were saying as an opportunity. I call it as a challenge. But what is the guarantee that you will rise up to the challenge? Our countries are not very good in terms of reforming their policies or their institutions for that matter. There is not enough political goodwill or appetite to pursue this thing. So why do you think that this will happen? The magic will take place.
Professor, there is no guarantee in life in any way. In any case, so
particularly in the pandemic world, of course, there is no guarantee of life.
I think pandemic, again, is an opportunity. For us to reform and to do things like e-commerce, for instance. Use of electronic means has really improved over time, I hope that keeps on going up. But there are two things I would like to add very quickly. One is at the global political forum, we have to unite as an LDC. We have to say that we continue to need support where we critically need it. But more at home and more at a regional bilateral level, we'll really have to find where our critical needs have to be met. I think that way, I would see in another 10 years after graduation, the countries in South Asia and other places should really grow, add to their economic growth, and I'm optimistic about it.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I think we are approaching the deadline for this show, and we have used it quite well in terms of listening to our panelists and also our very distinguished interveners from the floor. And we have, I think, touched the raw nerve of LDC graduation in certain ways. I will close it with giving the opportunity to the panelists half a minute each. Mr. Sainju, your half a minute. Any parting thoughts? Please.
Thank you, Debapriya. Actually, definitely today's discussion is very, very fruitful. And definitely, I just want to agree with the post Pandey, especially this graduation, LDC graduations also create the opportunity for each and every country for a reform. Definitely, it creates an environment where we can have a develop an environment for the better investment and engaging the private sector role more progressively. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Sonam, please.
Yes, thank you. Actually, this session has been extremely useful for Bhutan particularly, and Mr. Bandari and I were just discussing that unlike Bangladesh and Nepal, in Bhutan, we really need to focus on this important issue. And today's discussion and the experiences that Bangladesh, Nepal are having will be very useful, and what we have also are going through. And I think this will also can be shared with our colleagues and policymakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mustafizur? We can't hear you. I know. We can't hear you.
Me.
Now it's there. Now it's there.
Okay. Yeah. What we are talking about is a time-bound period. We are not talking, till the,
end of the earth.
End of the earth,
You are talking about 12 years, huh?
We are talking about 12 years. We know that it can be maybe 6-7 years. Okay. So we need a breathing space. All of our countries, we have, we are now strategizing. Bhutan has its 12th five-year plan, which is a graduation, strategy. We also have our strategy. So we need some time. That's what we are talking about. Obviously, we will have to do our homework. And I think that we will have to shift from preference-driven competitiveness to skills and productive-driven competitiveness. That is the future.
Thank you very much. I think you have moderated your position. I love that you have made it time-bound now and more specific in certain ways.
Time-bound, yeah. We are.
I think let me conclude since time is out, and I think we got a very good context within which the LDC graduation taking place, 16 of them, of which 3 in South Asia. South Asia is leading the road, the column of the LDC graduating LDCs, and its experience will be extremely instructive for the rest of the group in many ways. And today we did see where the challenges are coming from, what are the risks, what are the possible mitigating factors, and what can international organizations starting from WTO, WIPO, then the Technology Bank, and we didn't talk much about the enhanced integrated trade programs, and of course UN CDP and many other the UN agencies who are involved in this. So we see all that. I think at the end of the day, what is coming down to is the issue that whether there is a convincing economic case for the whole group to ask for continuation of preferences and still be a graduate non-LDC. You see, this is the issue. Whether as a non-LDC, we are able to really ask for what was intended for the LDCs, and that logic has to be made much more technically strongly. And it has to be much more disaggregated in terms of not an omnibus one asking for everything but arms, but not everything for 12 years. That kind of approach may not work. I think it will take a bit more granular approach, and also the country priorities somehow to be integrated in and under a comprehensive scheme. Whether it will come as an omnibus proposal, whether it will come as a sector-specific one, or whether it will come as a voluntary best endeavor expression from specific group of countries or specific countries, that is something to be seen. But I see the necessary and sufficient conditions are still to be done adequately, and we have a role to play over there as researchers and analysts, both who will be evidence-driven. I am making a point out there over there. The moral case is there, but whether the politico-economic case has been made or not, that is still remains an open question. And that has been addressed by this panel very well, and those who had been listening to us over there. The question remains on the table, and the response is whistling in the wind. We will have to work further on that. Colleagues, thank you very much for being with us today. I want to thank my colleagues from IISD for making everything happen so smoothly. My colleagues at IISD had been excellent support in organizing this event, along with our 3 partner organizations in Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. And and their hosting has encouraged us to bring all these issues on the table to the attention of a global audience. Colleagues, thank you very much. Have a good day, good afternoon, or a good evening, and be safe and be happy. Thank you. Bye.